After World War II, in an attempt to take over Berlin in 1948, the Soviets installed blockades from East to West Germany, asserting their right to govern this contested area, also claimed by Western powers.
The struggle over Berlin is a microcosm of growing global conflict between Western democracy and Eastern communism, each claiming space in a global race to spread opposing ideologies.
The division of Berlin marks the starting point for the escalating global tension that defines the era of the Cold War.
In response to the Soviet blockade, Western powers airlifted supplies into East Berlin to demonstrate Western dominance.
Ultimately, Western democracy prevails and proves its power in Europe through many proxy wars that throughout Asia and the creation of NATO. World War II had officially started at the beginning of September 1939, sending the world into chaos. World War II began with the invasion of Poland when the leader of Germany, Adolf Hitler, attempted to lead his people to world domination. It was not long after the France and Britain declared war on Germany.
The war continued for 2 more years before the two dominating world powers, Russia and the United States, joined the war, fighting for the Allies. Though Russia was originally supporting Germany and the Axis powers, after Hitler, the leader of Germany, invaded Russia in 1941, it caused Russia to change sides and help fight against Germany.
At the end of the war, Britain, France, the United States, and the Soviet forces had made their way into Germany, causing a 4-way standoff of the land.
Each country had proven to be vital during World War II, and each of the 4 governments believed they had the right to the land. So, Germany was split into 4 different zones. Germany's capital, Berlin, was also split up, the east side going to the Soviets and the west side going to France, Britain, and the United States. But because Berlin was deep inside the Soviet zone, when the Soviets put up the blockade 3 years later, the only way that Western allies could get to the capital was through the sky. The Allies had 2 competing visions for Germany. The United States and Britain believed that because of Nazi extremism that had arisen due to the Great Depression, the best chance of a peaceful Europe was a democratic Germany, whereas the Soviets wanted a communist Germany with the rest of the Allies out of Britain to make Germany a buffer state to allow their continuation of world-spread communism.
With Germany in economic ruin after World War II, the German currency had lost so much value that it would take almost a whole paycheck for a loaf of bread. The Western Allies, the US, the UK, and France did attempts in new currency, but it failed after the Soviets sabotaged the effort by printing millions of extra notes. In June of 1948, the Western powers planned to introduce a new currency to West Berlin and West Germany, the Deutschmark. The Western powers kept the new currency a secret from the Soviets and the East in hopes of regaining control of the economy in Germany, bringing in aid under the Marshall Plan, and putting an end to the black market that was running rampant. The Western powers also took this as an opportunity to gain support for democracy and support for Western powers.
Before the new currency was introduced, the Soviets found out about the Western Allies' plan to start a new German state and to introduce the new currency. And in protest, the Soviets left the Allies. The Deutschmark was introduced to West Germany regardless of the Soviets dropping out of the 4 powers government, and in response, on June 23, 1948, the Soviets closed all road, rail, and water transportation to West Berlin, marking the start of the Berlin Airlift.
I had a little private war all my own. The State Department was yelling about Arab oil. The Russians were standing around waiting to take over, and we didn't know exactly what was going to happen at all.
The United States was proposed with an impossible choice. They could leave Berlin and let the Soviets take control. They could stay in Berlin and wait till the people would rush to the Soviets in desperation for food, or they could force their way through the blockade and raise the possibility of starting yet another world war in Germany and Europe.
With the options either leading to bad views on Western allies and a democratic government or war, the Western allies' chances of staying in West Berlin seemed less and less likely, until William Turner, one of the American Air Force generals, was recommended.
William Turner was known for organizing and directing huge air transport operations when it came to international attention in World War II. His command in 1943 of the India-China Division of the Air Transport Command in the China-Burma India, better known as Flying the Hump, carried supplies and personnel to China across the Himalayas from India in a mission much like the Berlin Airlift needed at the moment. Without William H. Turner, it's almost a fact that the Berlin Airlift would have been unsuccessful. Almost immediately after Turner was given charge, he started making changes to the process of transporting supplies to West Berlin. For the first part of the airlift, the airmen were using leftover C-54s from World War II. These C-54s were in terrifying conditions, almost completely makeshift, making it harder for the pilots to fly and load. One of the first things the Turner did was push for the military to use new cargo planes. These C-54s, ignoring the large concurrences from his peers about leaving America vulnerable.
Alongside the new planes came a new plan. William Turner not only created a steady operation where a new plane was landing almost every 3 minutes, but each plane was delivering over 10,000 tons of cargo and was unpacking it in less than 15 minutes.
Gil Halvorsen almost immediately began helping the democratic cause, sending physical proof that Western allies could and would keep West Berlin alive over the winter. Despite the growing doubt, in reality, Gil Halvorsen became the lead propaganda in support of democracy during the Cold War. Because of Gil's original efforts to bring joy to the children of West Berlin, William Turner began to not only multiple candy bombings in West Berlin, but also within the United States as well.
With over 4,320 planes landing in Berlin every day, it almost went unnoticed when one plane in particular began dropping little packs of candy to children of West Berlin. Gil Halvorsen was a 28-year-old pilot and the symbol of hope during the Berlin Airlift. Gil Halvorsen earned the nickname Uncle Wiggly Wings and the Candy Bomber after he began creating small bundles of gum and chocolate for the children of West Berlin. Gil brought hope for Germany and helped bring in willingness to donate needed supplies for West Germany. Still to this day, reenactings of the candy bombing is widely participated in both the United States and Germany. Gil was the reason for hope in West Germany and helped bring support to democracy. His small act of kindness would later change the fate of both the Berlin Airlift and the Cold War.
Though the Soviets were a big part of the overall Cold War, they had little to do with the Berlin Airlift outside of causing the blockade. The Soviets fired bullets into the sky near where Allied airplanes were flying, but not a single one hit a plane or caused a casualty.
After 15 months of non-stop airlifting, the Soviets began to suffer more than the West Berliners were. West Berlin not only supplied East Germany's factories, but it also was the easiest point in East Germany for people to gain democratic rights that the communist government did not give. Almost 100 people a day were leaving East Germany through West Berlin, taking a toll on East Germany's worker population.
So on May 12, 1949, the Soviets finally lifted the blockade from East to West Berlin, marking the end of the first major victory for the rights of government in the Cold War.
The blockade had left many short and long-term impacts throughout its wake. The major short-term impact was the fact that the people of Berlin had managed to survive through the harsh and difficult winter months, creating a hopeful vision and inhabitants of Germany. Furthermore, the blockade became a minimal issue in the minds of the Western Allies and was the first real victory for democracy.
Although the short-term impacts were quick to happen, they helped create the long-lasting effects in today's society. One of the impacts was the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1988, demonstrating the Western Allies' strong moral responsibility over the land they helped govern. The Berlin Airlift set the precedent for a long proxy war over communism and democracy. After the Soviets' loss of the blockade, they set up the future of democracy over communism in most of European states. The Berlin Airlift caused the fall of the Berlin Wall, allowing East Germany to be able to have their natural rights back and help prove France, UK, and USA's determination to continue to be responsible for protecting and providing the people of the land.
Due to the failure of the Berlin blockade and the success of the Berlin Airlift, the Soviets decided to spread communism over Asia instead of forcing it through Europe. Russia saw this as an opportunity to force people into believing in one government for what the Soviets believed was their right to power. Though the government of Russia saw this as their responsibility to spread communism and unite the world under one government, they deliberately refused and took away people's natural rights and right to government.
The mutual efforts to end the Cold War and the fear of the Soviets forcing communism over the world brought together the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, otherwise known as NATO. They believed it was their responsibility to protect the rights of the people and prevent another world war from happening. In conclusion, the Berlin Airlift not only affected many people's rights during the event, but it also still affects people today.
The leading countries involved continue to demonstrate their dedication to responsibilities that they protected and forced over 75 years ago today.